people that are working second and third shift, as Maggie mentioned, you know, we wouldn't be running a system that would require as many buses as we do during the day. It would be more targeted to where people live and where they go to work. But you also create with a 24-hour facility is a place where people can be dropped off and picked up. And a lot of times it's convenient for a parent or for a spouse to say, well, heck, if they work out at Spirit and they can get to this facility, well, I'll drive the 3 blocks and pick them up. Or they can jump on a scooter or a bike, or they can leave a car there, whatever the facility will allow. It gives you a lot of flexibility without necessarily having to take them right from door to door, but having that connection there with that facility would be a huge advantage for us.
Thank you.
Now, if we can just get Amtrak from here to Oklahoma
I
City.
know, we're working on it.
That's next. I have a quick question about the bike storage.
Sure.
So what are the initiatives to prevent bike theft in the short-term bike storage? Because I know what you saw with people like stealing, I know you're talking about security and lighting, but compared to the long-term bike storage.
We're gonna have cameras all throughout that facility. The FTA again requires when you have people that are using public transportation in a facility like that, there's be cameras all over it. And then with the security office, but also too, we're gonna create a safe environment for everybody in around there. So there's challenges to doing that, but our intent is to make sure that we have everything covered with cameras, lighting, and personnel. And then, of course, that facility, where the placement of that is, we'll wanna make sure that that's got plenty of visibility, because we don't want people there locking and unlocking their bikes and not feel secure being able to do that. So those are things we're gonna be looking at very closely.
I have a question. You said that you're going to change the routes of the buses, right? How are you planning on working out where they should go?
Well, that's really what we're looking at from the standpoint of getting more direct lines that are running straight across. So we would never, to us to go to a complete grid system where buses, you have all your street transfers going, it would require us almost a tripling of the size of our system, which would be a massive amount of money to be able to do that. So we'll create a hybrid system, and planners are much better at that. So you'll have some routes that go right and buses that are going north and south are crossing with buses going east and west. So people make street transfers at that point in time. And then other buses will be going into this facility depending upon how close they are to Maple or to Douglas. So you create certain routes that don't go into that facility, go in a straight line right across town, or go north and south. And where they cross, you create points for people to transfer onto those buses.
I think that's what it should be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And the parking will just be public downtown parking for anyone to use, like charge it as
There'll be short-term parking, long-term parking that are there. People that may live in the area may want to do long-term parking, short-term parking for people that are using the system or during events. That's perfectly smart.
I've got a couple questions. The lobby and the platform, the platform looked pretty open air, exposed to the elements. The lobby, is there a ticketing office in the lobby, or is
Yes.
that only in the platform?
No, there'll be a ticketing window in the lobby, and then we'll also on the platform have automated systems where you can just walk up to, just like an ATM machine, and buy your product there. By that time, we already have a mobile ticketing app now that we use. By that time, we'll have smart cards and whatnot, but there will be access in the lobby for people to ask questions about parking or what time the bus will be there and things like that, so that will be there.
Okay, and they said there was a small area for some light maintenance. The main maintenance is going to continue to be done off-site somewhere.
Yep, the only facility we'll be closing is the what you see over there at Emporia by the Intrust. But our maintenance facility will still be over on Waterman off of there. And the only thing we intend on doing at this facility would be if a bus comes in, and let's say that, again, like Brett mentioned, if they need a wiper replaced or a light bulb replaced. But other than that, our buses go through a thorough cleaning and washing and safety review every night at our other facility, and that's what that will always be.
Do we know what the plans are for the existing facility?
No, not yet. But, it has a small, little left of federal requirement, but a federally funded building maintains a federal interest for about 40 years, but it decreases each year. So the amount of federal interest is very, very small, more than likely. whatever the city decides to do, but with the amount of economic development that's going down in that area, I would say by the time that this facility's ready to be programmed, there'll be a lot of options for that property, I think. There's been interest in it now, just as people even know that it's potentially has a limited lifespan for the next couple of years.
All right, do we have any other questions for this item?
Yeah. Starting and completion dates.
Construction would start in spring of '23, and I would say towards the end of '24 for completion. We've got some details to work out on that, so I'm gonna give myself a little larger window.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we can go ahead and move to our item number 8. We have conditional use 2022 0.
Sorry.
Yeah. You need a vote.
Yeah, so we need to vote on this one.
That is right. All right, with that, we bring it back to the DAF for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the concept design.
I'll second it.
All those voting for this motion?
Aye.
All right. Looks like it passes 7-0. Now we can go ahead and move on to item number 8. Bill, it's all yours.
Bill Longenecker, Senior Planner, current plans. The first planning item you have is conditional use 2022 00007. And that is a conditional use to allow ancillary parking. And that is to provide parking for a private pool and clubhouse. This particular property is lot 47. Parcel A. It's proposed to provide 15 parking spaces on this property. It's zoned single-family residential. You can make an application for ancillary parking with this zoning, with the conditional use, and that's what the applicant has proposed. Have we got the report with any slides?
Yes, let me pull up that staff report.
Okay. So, again, this is a private pool. The pool itself is located in a reserve around this subdivision that, there it is. You can see the reserve. It's a rather large reserve that's got fingers in between these residential lots, which all zone single-family residential, as is the reserve. Now, the reserve itself is located, the pool itself is located around this portion of the reserve. This south portion of that lot 47, the parcel A, is where the parking lot's gonna be for that particular private pool for this subdivision. There are supplemental use regulations that are listed with this, and the applicant has to comply with this. I do not see those attached. But let's continue on. There we go. Okay. Location, ancillary parking shall be within 600 feet. They meet that requirement. This parking lot abuts that portion of the reserve where the pool and the clubhouse are going to be located. Use, ancillary parking only for passenger vehicles only. Again, this is a private pool for that subdivision. So we're going to be seeing folks that live in that subdivision use it, and they'll be using passenger vehicles. Setbacks, they'll have to meet the requirements with the setbacks. That means they're also going to have to provide a site plan for this, for final approval for this conditional use. So that site plan will also include the setbacks. It's going to show the actual size of the parking lot, the slots themselves, as well as the internal circulation for any emergency vehicles to get in and out. That goes down into also 7. Screening and landscaping, you're going to have street side landscaping here that's going to have to be met, is because this does abut a local residential road. It again, we'll be looking at that with a final site plan for approval that'll be approved by the planning director. If there is any lighting for this particular parking lot, it can only be a maximum height of 15 foot, and it has to be set back half the height. Half the height of that parking lot has to be set back from that property line. And we are abutting the rest of that single-family lot. Signs only necessary for proper operation, so it'll simply identify as parking for this particular subdivision. You can't charge for parking on this. You're within an HOA, so you're paying a fee anyway for the swimming pool. Additional requirements, I don't see anything that's gonna happen here out of the unusual with this particular conditional use application. That's a 2021 area. This subdivision is still under development. Let me see the next one, please, Lana. There's a zoning in the area. We've got single-family residential zoning. All this in the gray, white, that's all single-family residential zoning. Now you see this kind of beige? We're right up against Sedgwick County. So the city limits are buttoned up against Sedgwick County here. And you've got different size tracts and lots on that. But you can see there's quite a bit of urban scale development here. You're in West Wichita, so it's not unusual to have development of what used to be sand pits, and they're now being redeveloped. Could we have the next slide, please? Okay, you're seeing a future growth map of the area. It clearly shows it to be new residential. That whole area there. Next slide, please. Okay, we're just looking at, these are just photos of the area. You can see there's some development going on southeast of the site, which would be across 45th Street North. Looking south at the site, there's not much going on there. They've just leveled it out. Again, we're looking at an area that's still waiting to develop. It's got some development across the street, 45th, but this is a fairly new subdivision that is getting ready to be built. I believe that's it. This was heard by the Planning Commission on May 19th. It was approved 11-0 per staff comments, which means you've got to meet those supplemental use regulations that were listed. We received no protest at this, and the protest period ends June 2nd. So we've already gone past the protest period. Now, the thing about conditional use, if the Planning Commission, if there's no protest, or if this district advisory board has no problem with this, the Planning Commission's recommendation is final. If there's protest to it, or this district advisory board or the council member wants to have this go before city council, then it would proceed. But at this point, we've had no protest, no written, no call-ins. So protest period's ended unless this body decides differently. The conditional use has been approved by Planning Commission, and that is final. I'll stand for questions.
Can I just ask, why would anybody want to keep an HOA and it's their neighborhood from, I mean, are there ever circumstances you would want to stop them from having a parking lot in their own neighborhood?
You know, it's offhand. I mean, it's all contingent upon the site.
Right.
So you know, really can't answer that if you look at a site. There's nothing atypical about this site. We don't have any, we don't have any big engineering concerns about developing this. So it's a fairly small development, which these community pools typically are with the parking. So yeah, there could be, but again, you're looking at site location, and this location's fine.
I'm just curious as why it wasn't rolled into the original site plan that way. I mean, why is it separate?
Well, we request a minimal site plan to begin with. But as far as getting the landscaping done, the applicant would prefer to have the protest period over and then go ahead and trick it out the way it needs to be. And this is a reliable company that's doing this particular application. planning commission, the planning department has no qualms about this, based on what we've been presented with in past experience.
Do we have any other questions?
I know it doesn't, I know this isn't a planning question, but for like water runoff, does that impact code or design or anything like this when you're talking parking lot and?
Oh, yeah, impervious surface, sure, yeah, they're gonna have to do a drainage plan for that parking lot. You know, their advantages are right, they've got a
That's
big
in the
reserve
design-
there
that's in
up
the
against, it's
design
got
area,
water in it.
which then goes into a different city department.
I'm sorry, what?
That's in the design passed on once they get to the design aspect of actual building plans.
Yeah, the actual building plans will have them, require them to do a drainage plan.
Gotcha.
That'll be part of the permitting process.
All right, do we have the applicant or agent here today?
I don't
I don't
see.
think so. Do we have anybody else, anybody in the public who's wanting to make, ask any questions or comments on this case? Now with that, we bring it back to the DAP for a motion. Additional questions or comments?
I move to approve
Second.
recommendations of planning commission.
All right, we have a second with that.
Yes.
All voting to approve the motion. All right, it looks like it passes 7-0. With that, Bill, you're up next as well.
Okay. Your next case is a combination amendment to a community unit plan as well as a zone change. This is case community unit plan 2021-00017 and zone change 2022-00025. The zone change is for general office. This particular site is currently zoned single-family residential. Do we get the vicinity map up? There we go. So this is your site right here. As you can see, we've got Hood abutting its east side. We've got Garland abutting its west side. That is 22nd Street North. There's 21st. The way to get to 21st is either via Hood or Somerset. It's a single-family residential neighborhood that is abutting on the north side. Can we have the next slide? Let's go to that another slide, okay? Yeah, that's what we've got right now. We've got a parking lot that really is underused. This particular community unit plan is DP18. It's one of the older community unit plans in the city. This, you can just see at the back end of that community unit plan. It is currently got a large grocery store, Oriental grocery store. It's got a standalone bakery, a Mexican bakery. It's got several other retail establishments, standalone establishments. And this parking lot was, as far as we can tell, it was meant for overflow parking because it's not part of the parking calculations for the main body of that CUP. Can we go to the zoning, please? The zoning map? There we go. I wanted this because this shows you the size of that CUP 18 right there. And this is part of that CUP. It's separated by 22nd Street. There was an associated vacation case on this particular, that was connected to this particular site. And that was, the applicant was looking to vacate 22nd between Garland and Hood to connect these two properties to make them one continuous property. Well, the vacation of 22nd, that portion between Garland and Hood, has been dropped. So that presented two issues for this particular site that the applicant has had to address. And one, for a self-storage warehouse, which is the amendment for this CUP, you've got to be contiguous to an arterial street. Well, 22nd is not an arterial, Hood is not an arterial. So if they would have gone ahead and tried to get set 22nd vacated, they would have had that continuous abutting an arterial, which is 21st. So they're asking for a waiver of that because they dropped that vacation case. And there were protests of that vacation case, by the way, also, and the subdivision committee voted no on that vacation, so they've dropped that. So now they're asking for a waiver on that locational criteria where they've got to be contiguous to an arterial. That's listed on page 2 of your staff report. If you're looking at, we've got the planners written out, some of the supplemental use regulations that they're looking at. So 1 and 2, where they're asking for a waiver, that's all about if that vacation of 22nd Street was denied or they withdrew it. So they withdrawn it, and that's all about having direct access to an arterial. And the way they planned to do that was they were going to drive through here to 21st. Well, that's not going to happen. So they're going to have to use either Hood or Somerset to get to 21st. Therefore, they're asking for that waiver to have direct arterial access. The other waiver they're asking for, and staff was okay with those first 2 waivers on that arterial. The other waiver they're asking for is that self-storage warehouse has to have on-site manager, 24/7, living there. And they're asking for a waiver of that. They're asking for a waiver of that because the property owner has an office there, therefore he's going to be there. However, staff, we're not supporting that particular waiver because it's not having a person 24/7 on that site. One of the things about self-storage warehouses is there's concern about vandalism. You know, people getting in and not only vandalism but theft. Well, the whole point of the on-site manager is to keep that at a minimum. Other than that, you've seen this type of development evolve over the years. It used to be a development that you used to see in commercial, even industrial areas. But, you know, you drive through subdivisions and you see 2, 3-car garages, 4 garages. People got a lot of stuff. So this type of use has evolved to the point where it's become more centered on where the actual customers are, the rooftops. Therefore, it's had to make some changes in regards to how to develop it. And one of those is the 24/7 manager on site. Another is the architectural compatibility in regards to having this facility not be out of character with the neighborhood. In other words, it can't look industrial. It's got to have landscaping. In this case, you're looking at a 15-foot landscape strip around the east, west, and north sides where it's abutting single-family residential. So staff supported this application in regards to the self-storage warehouse. We've given the reasons why we supported it in regards to how it fits into conformance to plans and policies. And one of those plans and policies, could we have the 2035, you can see our site is split by commercial development, which is where they want to put the self-storage warehouse, and the yellow, which is single-family residential. This also shows the 21st Street North Corridor Revitalization Plan, which is looking to take underused property and use them for infill, to revitalize the area. And right now, that parking lot isn't doing anything but deteriorating. So it meets the concept of the 21st Street North Corridor in regards to infill and revitalization, and it also meets in regards to having commercial development on that south portion with the yellow on single family. Could we have another slide, please? Okay. There you're seeing the illustration about how they're gonna lay it out. But, you're also seeing residential high density too. This is the neighborhood. You're looking at the site right there. There's 22nd Street. You're looking at southeast of the site. You're looking at the site, and you're looking over to the east this way, the northeast. Again, this is 22nd, this is Hood. And there you're looking at the CUP, the actual limited commercial that's right on 21st up against Hood. And this is the area they were thinking about using if they vacated 22nd, just driving through there. So that's the main CUP that this parking lot is supposedly supposed to be used as overflow, but isn't doing much of anything now.
And they really have a pretty huge parking lot on 21st.
Again, and this, this isn't part of the CUPs, the main body's already got the parking they need. And before this was even a part of the CUP, they had a BZA, a variance to allow parking on this. And then this property was bought and made part of the CUP, but I'm not sure. I guess it's like, I don't know, it's like Walmart thinking they're gonna have the best Christmas ever, so they gotta have all this parking, so. But we've got property that's underused, but it's also property that the neighborhood would like to keep, just stay open, quite frankly, because they feel they need the open space, and it lends itself to being a more walkable neighborhood, they feel like. I haven't heard a lot of complaints. This is my case, so it's secondhand, but I have worked with the planner and the applicants on this, but I haven't heard a lot of complaints about traffic being generated by self-storage, because typically it's a low generator. It's a fairly quiet operation, and if you got the manager on site, it can be even quieter. You're gonna have to do architectural compatibility. We have received protests, but I haven't got a map. And I was looking at the protests, they were handwritten, and it didn't look like they provided the information that we needed to recognize on this property owner. So, again, I haven't talked to those folks, it's not my case, but I understand what's going on here. So we've got protest on this, and the planning commission recommended denial of this, 6-5-1. So 6 people voted to deny it, 5 to approve it, with 1 absence. Now, for that 1 vote that was abstaining, would have voted to approve, that would have been a deadlock, so the motion to deny would have been dead. They would have gone through it. So it was a close vote. Staff's recommended it with the conditions we've got. Planning Commission is recommending denial of it. We have had at least 2 people turn in handwritten protest. And because of the zone change, this will go to City Council unless the applicant decides not to proceed with this.
So staff said no, planning commission said yes.
I'm sorry, what?
Other way around.
Oh. So
Staff said yes.
Staff
Planning
said yes,
commission said
planning
no.
commission said no.
Right, and staff noted that we're waiving the condition that you have to be direct access to an arterial. Those are listed on your report on page 2.
What's the difference between a variance and a waiver?
Well, variance is a whole run. Variances, they're not considered by the planning commission, Board of Zoning Appeals. And they're not, you can't appeal them to the city council. They're
Strictly to the zoning.
a variance is all about what you need to your land and why you have to do what you want to do on it. Typically, you're looking at a variance, you're looking at setbacks, like you wanna build your structure closer to your property line than you should.
Okay.
Well, you've gotta show me what's different about your land compared to your neighbor's land. A waiver, we've got supplemental use regulations for conditional uses. And even if a conditional use does not have supplemental use regulations listed, the planning commission has the discrepancy to provide condition for approval. So when we're saying we're waiving supplemental use regulations, we're simply saying we're not gonna apply those to this particular site. And planning commission do that. I know the BZA, I know the word I'm looking for in regards to the difference between a variance and a waiver. I gave you the different government bodies and what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
For the life of me, I can't pick
No,
up that
thank you.
term.
Good.
Any other questions?
I mean, are there protests about it being an ugly use store it? I mean, is they that concerned about the looks of it? Or was it more just?
No, it was,
The one in the packet is, they don't like the cut of that guy's jib, is how it mainly comes down to.
They don't like what?
They don't like the guy.
He's never kept the property up.
It's right here.
Yeah.
So there's, oh, I see.
yeah, the other one's in the folder. The one that's back in the folder that came after this, talked about walkability and light, and then wanted the open space. But this, you know, it's about the land, it's not about the property owner, but of course, the property owner carries a reputation with him, which, you know, you're part of the neighborhood, so people know you. But I haven't heard, you know, the one guy that talked about walkability said they really didn't like self-storage either. They wanted open space.
Buy the land.
Crumbling concrete is open space.
Well, it's open space, it's not very well maintained open space right now. It's an underused piece of property that the applicant thinks could be better served by self-storage. Staff agreed partially on it. Our disagreement with the applicant is we want 24/7 manager on site.
Right. So what is the teeth to that? What guarantees that there's gonna be somebody on site after this goes through?
I'm sorry, what?
If this goes through, they're gonna be required to have somebody on site 24/7. How do we verify that that happens?
Well,
And it,
the neighbors, for one, you know, or you could simply ask as a citizen. And as far as, you know, officially checking up on it, I'll tell you the truth, I don't know. I mean, code enforcement would be my first thought in regards, are they following the code? Because if you don't meet the standards of conditional use, the planning director can find the conditional use null and void. So, I mean, if you don't have if you say you gotta have a 24/7 manager there, and you don't, the planning director finds that out, he's gonna give you a notification, and if you don't do it, then he could declare it null and void.
It just seems to
But
me
then you're gonna have a facility that's not gonna be used.
I mean, a spike in crime would be.
It just seems to me like they don't wanna do the manager on site, and as soon as people quit looking, they're not gonna do it.
Well, I think
if you have the agent that's present, we can open it at this time for them to say something, a few comments, or answer some of the questions that might be addressed by the agent or the applicant.
I think one reason why they don't want it, because the site's small, and they wanna utilize as much of it for storage as possible. But the site is what it is, and staff would recommend you still have the manager on site. Any other questions?
Do you guys have, this is your floor now, if you wanna address the DAB, answer some of those questions?
Yes, we'll be glad to answer questions, or try to answer questions. There was a site plan in your handout. We've kind of tweaked it a little bit, because there are some requirements that the staff wants as far as landscaping. I've got enough for everybody. As far as landscaping and that type of stuff, so we've modified it a little bit to show that. And we're fine with staff comments, and if we need to have somebody on site 24/7, we will do that. One of the reasons, as Bill said, it's a small site, which is one of the reasons we wouldn't want it, but, you know, as I said, we would do it if we needed to, as part of the condition of approval. You know, if you look at the self-storage, in certain zonings, it's conditional, like in the zoning we're proposing here, it's conditional. But if you're in a more more intense zoning like a general commercial, it's not a conditional, it's an approved use. So if this was bumped up to GC, we wouldn't have to have anybody on site. And we wouldn't have these other requirements that are also as part of the conditional use. But this probably isn't the best.
This is a
for
good site for
GC.
GC. All right. I mean, the reason you asked
we
me.
met
A
with-
little bit, they're having a hard time hearing on
Sure.
the data, if you guys can just
Okay.
speak up a little bit.
And we met with staff, you know, and went over all the case and what we were wanting to do and what they thought would be a good idea and that type of thing. A little bit of history, you know, like Bill said, we were applying to vacate that piece of 22nd and then have one continuous property and you could drive all the way through back and forth, and that would be your point of access. And then we go to the subdivision committee, and a couple of the residents showed up and they were concerned about, you know, they lived on Garland Street, which is the one in the middle. They were concerned about access, emergency access if something happened. We said, okay. And we talked to staff, and staff was kind of like, well, we can make, we would go ahead and be fine with having the access not necessarily directly to arterial street, which is one of those requirements with the conditional. So we said, we'll just withdraw our vacation case, kind of foolishly thinking that it wouldn't be an issue as far as the access to the arterial street, because you could still drive through the parking lot and get there. And it's very short runs, like on Hood Street. You have, I believe, 2 single-family residential and then commercial stuff on Hood. So you're really, in a way, coming off of there anyway with a direct access it's a residential street, but it's not just up and down houses on there. The other side's some commercial multifamily on the West Street. I think probably most of the traffic would come through on Hood because this is closer to Hood. And as you can see on the site plan, we plan on having the access to this off of 22nd Street. And like I said, we're fine with the staff comments, and I'd be glad to try to answer any questions.
Any questions?
So, you know, I don't know what the DAB's gonna vote on, but
Mhm.
I'm going to assume that it's gonna stick with that stipulation of having an on-site manager.
Yes.
Where are you anticipating that you would put that?
We'll find a place.
These little tiny things?
We probably have to eliminate a couple of those or something like that, yeah.
It seems like a lot of these places have living quarters.
Yeah, some of them do.
Somebody in them.
Yes.
That's
correct.
It's not something they're interested in adding, and because then it becomes somewhat a rental property and a place for a manager to live. I don't know, I'm just.
Right.
Is that out of the question for them?
Well, if that's one of the requirements that you have, then that's what we'll do.
I think that's pretty typical for any storage space that I've seen. There's always been somebody that lived
Yeah.
there or stayed there at least.
Or there's a lot of very expensive, high-tech security,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
which is different. On-site, yeah. But their concern, I think, the concern was that that might be forgotten. That's why I thought living quarters would make it less likely that someone wouldn't be there.
Any more questions? Does anybody want to make a motion?
Wait, I might have just one question, sorry. Can you explain, because maybe I missed it and there's seems a little complicated, but what was the planning commission's reason for denial of it? Like, I see all the staff, this one makes sense to me, but.
Go ahead.
Okay,
please.
the motion they made that they voted on was to deny because of the access not having the direct access,
Because of that arterial.
because of the arterial
They
requirement,
wanted it
yes.
to be contiguous.
Right, and they said we had the arterial, and then there was another one that is waived because of it also, and it was kind of along the lines of, we're looking at a couple things that we have to waive now, the arterial requirement, and then whatever the other had to do with it, and that's the reason they voted that.
Well, then you're asking for the waiver of the on-site.
They didn't want it, the planning.
They
commission also
didn't mention
want it.
that one, but yeah.
Oh.
The one they mentioned was the
Yeah, yeah.
access issue, which we kind of created ourselves by withdrawing the vacation case. But
Do we have additional comments? Members from the public, do we have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Commission. Bill Johnson, Evans Building Company, 5555 North Larson Road, Mays, Kansas. I worked directly with the owner, got Kurt involved, got with staff. A lot of the deal of not having somebody on site, if we'd have got 22nd Street vacated, we could have easily had a location there that would have been tied together for the storage. We basically tried to get along with the neighbors, so we dropped the case on 22nd Street, since staff said we could still get it approved by not having that. So that's kind of where we headed, trying to be a good neighbor. The parking lot's been there since, I think, the 80s. I don't think there'd been a house on it for 40, 50 years. The owner just wants to try, instead of picking up trash all the time. And the other thing I want everybody to understand, since it's a conditional use, if you don't do everything that's listed on the conditional, you'll lose it. And he's gonna have a tremendous investment, so I would think it'd be not in his best interest to not have an on-site manager.
and
Okay.
I believe the parking lot, and I don't know if you know that much history on it, but I believe it was paved as an overflow parking when they got approval for a nightclub on the larger part of the CUP.
I think it goes back from, it was a BCA variance for parking before the nightclub.
Before the nightclub?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it had to do with the nightclub, that's why they did it, but
I thought the nightclub went down in flames.
still allowed though.
Okay.
But I think it did go down in flames, which is why nobody's parking there, yeah.
Did you have a question or comment?
I mean, I did. I just have one concern. I mean, if we approve it with these conditions, it's just another self-storage. There's one on West 21st, there's one on North Hamilton. It just seems like a waste of space to build a self-storage in the middle of houses when you can build something better that serves the community better. I mean, you go across every block and there's a self-storage, they run down, I mean, how many people actually use them? I mean, you come with these plans that are basically already under the condition that they're not gonna have a 24-hour manager. I mean, I was listening to the DAB members, and I mean, there's no location for the manager to sleep in. There's no living quarters. It just seems kind of.
Okay, staff is not supporting, they're asking for a waiver of that. Staff says they gotta have 24/7 on-site manager living there.
And we've agreed that we're gonna have it.
So, I mean, so the site plan that you got tonight, there's not a site plan that's gonna be approved because it doesn't show the on-site residence for the manager.
Right, but it seems presumptuous to bring those plans and not have that living quarters. Not to not have that already planned out when you're asking.
Was taken away.
So, well, but,
My main concern is that I live close to that neighborhood. The last thing I want to see is another self-storage unit. Another big old building that just takes up space.
I mean, 24/7, I mean, that doesn't mean that someone has to live there. That means someone has to be.
Right, you can have an
paid.
office there.
You can just have someone sitting there on site,
Right.
in a little office.
And this thing will be gated too. I mean, it's not like,
They don't have to actually be a residence.
Right.
Is that right?
and to answer this gentleman's question, we gotta get the approval before we go through all the design and everything. What you see here won't even be probably close because we have to follow all the criteria that we're approved by.
But it's better than what you have in the staff report.
Yeah.
The staff report has them all over the place and doesn't have any room for the landscaping, that kind of stuff, which is requirements from the staff, which we're fine with the landscaping.
There's no-
all the way around it.
No openings to the outside, they're all internally.
When you say staff report, you're talking about the planning commission.
I'm talking about the planning department's report, the one that you have in front of you, yeah.
It says a resident manager, right?
Yeah.
So,
So it would be.
Oh, it does.
Did they take away the ability to build a residence? When they, okay, that was.
Seems like that would have been included in this.
Okay, look on page 8 of your staff report.
we don't have
They
that.
don't have the staff report, I can pull it up here for them.
No, you don't have the staff report.
We were given an advanced review.
Okay,
Page 8, here it is.
all right, look at number 17. A resident manager shall be required on the
A
site.
resident manager.
So the responsibility.
So you're looking at a resident manager. That means somebody's gonna be basically living there.
This is about 2 acres.
It's less than that.
Yeah, a little
Probably
less
about
than
an acre
two.
and a half. It's not a big site.
It's 82,690, so it's a little less than 2 acres.
1.56 acres.
I think, is it fair to say that, I mean, the question really here is not necessarily about storage unit, but it's like, given this information, we just need to make a decision about whether or not we approve the presentation with these specific things, that we approve the staff recommendation to waive the initial contiguity of the site, so they don't have to take out that street. But then also the recommendation that we want, we say, we got this resident manager, we're not gonna allow that waiver. And that's the question, right?
It's based off of staff recommendation.
I would, given no other points on those points specifically, I've been reminded several times that, you know, the self-storage thing, I think we, but again, that's not a question
No.
with this thing here. I would, barring further discussion on those points, I would motion that we approve the recommendations as we got them.
I'd second.
Okay, so we're approving a zone change from single family to general office and then an amendment to DP 18 as staff has recommended, which includes the resident manager and waiving the continuation so you get direct access to an arterial.
Yes, please.
Okay,
You can go ahead and move over to a vote. Anybody, all DAP members voting for SAC's motion?
You don't have a second yet, do you?
Yeah,
No,
I
I-
seconded it. All right, can I see a vote by a show of hands?
Under duress.
One
Okay,
hand
so
is
I
up.
have 5.
I'm not,
All against the motion? 5-2. All right, looks like the motion passes.
this will go to city council for final action because of the zone change.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I just have a couple announcements really quick. We do have a special, district advisory meeting, on Wednesday the 15th. We have 4 planning cases that will be heard. And I just stress that you guys all be here so that we have enough people to, vote. Otherwise, we would have had 6 or 7 tonight. So it's already 9 o'clock, so, that's why we're having the extra meeting to
That's a
break
better
that up a
idea.
little bit. So, I just urge you, if you guys can all come, please come on the 15th. Also, this Saturday, is the Benjamin Hills, Pleasant Valley cleanup from 8 to noon. Okay, and then,
Volunteer. on down, bring your remotes.
And then the other thing that's going on Saturday from 10 to 1 is the Tri-Neighborhood Brunch, and it's actually gonna be at Manissa. So if anybody wants to bring a snack to share with anyone, they will be there. And just check out Riverfest if you guys haven't been in. There's a lot of fun stuff going on.
That's all really,
Yes, and this will be the last weekend for it, so just have fun, have a good week, and make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, let's do it. Okay.
Thank you guys so much.